What if the man everyone overlooked, the janitor in the lobby, was the only one who could expose a conspiracy so deep it shook an empire? One scream was all it took to unleash the secret he had buried for years. A scream pierced the shadows of the garage, for men were closing in. No one could have predicted that the janitor, the quiet single dad, would be the one to save her. Stay with me, and if this grips you, leave a comment and hit subscribe. The fluorescent lights hummed faintly above Hale Tower's underground garage, usually filled with the hum of engines or the tap of heels on concrete. But that night, the stillness was slashed apart by something raw and desperate. A scream. "Help! Please! Someone help!" The cry ricocheted against the walls, sharp and frantic. Adrian Park froze mid-step, the strap of his worn backpack biting into his shoulder. His shift was nearly done, and he'd been heading toward the service stairwell, ready to return to the small apartment where his 7-year-old daughter waited in warm lamplight. But that scream rooted him. His chest pounded. He knew that sound. It wasn't just fear. It was survival itself. Carefully, he leaned out from behind a thick concrete pillar. The sight unfolding in the CEO's reserved stall felt unreal. 2 bodyguards already lay unconscious, for masked men had cornered a woman, her blonde hair tangled from the struggle, her back pressed against a silver sedan. He knew her instantly. Victoria Hale. Her photo graced every lobby wall, the youngest CEO in the company's history. Her face, usually confident and controlled, was pale with terror. One masked man yanked her toward a black van, its sliding door open like a gaping mouth. "Get in quietly," he growled, his tone sharp and practiced. Adrian's breath caught. His instinct screamed at him to run. He was just a janitor, the man who scrubbed floors, emptied bins, and faded into the background. The fighter in him had been buried long ago, alongside his wife, Anna, when cancer stole her away. Since then, his world had been his daughter, Lena. He had promised her peace. No more fights. No more danger. But then Victoria screamed again. This time it wasn't a plea. It was a demand. A call that someone step forward, someone act. In that moment, Adrian felt the walls he had built around himself collapse. The promise he clung to cracked apart. His exhale was steady. The janitor fell away, and the fighter stirred awake. The backpack slid silently to the floor. His feet carried him with the practiced grace of memory. Heartbeat steady, his body focused, Adrian Park stepped out, not as the invisible man pushing a cart, but as a warrior drawn back into the light. The man gripping Victoria never saw it coming. One moment, he dragged her toward the van. The next, a sharp crack split the air. Adrian's palm slammed into his elbow joint with merciless precision. Bone bent the wrong way, and the man dropped with a howl. Before the others could react, Adrian was moving, a blur of ruthless control. A second attacker swung a wrench toward his skull, but Adrian slid inside the strike, catching the man's wrist, driving his elbow up hard into his chin. The attacker collapsed like a puppet cut from its strings. 2 down. Victoria pressed herself against the car, her eyes wide. She had never seen anyone move like that, silent, efficient, as if this had been rehearsed 1,000 times. The last 2 rushed him together, fists flying, expecting chaos. But Adrian was calm, untouchable. He sidestepped a wild punch, seizing a wrist and dragging the man off balance, just as the other lunged. They collided, stumbling. Adrian struck with brutal precision. His heel snapped into a knee, followed instantly by a spinning back fist to the other man's temple. Both crumpled in a heap. And then silence. 10 seconds. That's all it had taken. For men lay broken on the floor. The hum of lights returned, cold and sterile. Adrian stood over them, his chest steady. This wasn't about glory. It was survival, making sure the woman was alive. Victoria's gaze locked on him, her breath shallow. She wasn't looking at a janitor. She was staring at a ghost, a shadow, a savior born from nowhere. And just as suddenly, he vanished. Adrian melted back into the maze of concrete pillars, leaving no words, no explanation, only the wreckage of men at her feet. When Victoria blinked, he was gone, as if he had never been there, except for the destruction he left behind. Sirens blared. Security and police stormed the garage. Victoria's pulse thundered as questions rained down. Who were they? How had they breached? Had she seen their faces? But her mind was elsewhere, replaying those impossible seconds. He hadn't fought like a desperate man. He had fought like someone trained, measured, precise. She snapped at her shaken security chief. Mason, pull the footage. He stammered about bad camera angles. She cut him short. Show me now. Later, in her office high above the city, grainy footage flickered. The pillar blocked most of it, but then, a figure in a janitor's uniform stepped into frame. His face caught only for a second, blurred, but unmistakable. Her gut knew. Find him, she whispered. I want everything. Tonight. By midnight, Mason dropped a manila folder onto her desk. Inside, an ID photo stared back. Adrian Park, 36. 2 years with Hale Industries, cleaning service. But one detail unsettled her. Previous employment, self-employed. Too vague. She ordered a full background check. No delays. Hours later, the truth unfolded. Former head instructor of the Way of the Open Hand Academy. A black belt, a trainer for law enforcement. Photos showed him younger, smiling, a man of strength and honor. Then tragedy, his wife's cancer, the academy sold, savings drained, and finally, the quiet anonymity of a janitor's life. A man who had chosen invisibility for his daughter. Victoria closed the file, her mind racing. He hadn't saved her for recognition. He couldn't ignore the cry for help. He was hiding, not from justice, but from life itself. And she realized with a chill, the only person who had protected her was the one man everyone overlooked. The ghost. Adrian Park. The next morning, Adrian sat in his small kitchen, slicing Lena's sandwich into the star shape she loved. But his mind replayed every strike, every scream, every glance from Victoria's terrified eyes. At 7:15, a knock at the door. Firm. Official. His chest tightened. Daddy, someone's at the door. Lena called. He told her to stay put, masking his unease. Looking through the peephole, his breath caught. Victoria Hale. In his dingy hallway, she looked impossibly sharp, her tailored suit a stark contrast against peeling paint. He opened the door halfway, guarding the frame. Miss Hale, he said. Mr. Park. She replied evenly. May I come in? It wasn't a question. Inside, she scanned the apartment, the cartoons, the crayon drawings, the fragile life built for one little girl. Then she turned. I came to thank you, and to offer you something. My men failed me. You didn't. I want you as my head of security. Adrian's refusal came instantly. No, his daughter was his world, but her gaze sharpened. Do you think safety is still an option? Those men weren't amateurs. They'll be asking questions. You're the loose end, and they will find you. And Lena. His blood chilled. He glanced at his daughter's laughter in the other room. Innocence he had built walls to protect, now crumbling. Victoria's voice softened, but it cut deeper. You can say no to me, but not to them. He exhaled, heavy with inevitability. For Lena, for her safety. He could no longer hide. All right, he said at last, surrender laced with resolve. I'll do it. By afternoon, Adrian walked through Hale Tower, not with a mop, but under the weight of his new role. In the command deck, Mason's glare burned. Adrian studied the footage again, pointing out what the professionals had missed. Earpieces jammed before the attack. A van with a hawk decal, a hidden marker. Mason's smirk faltered. Then came the orchid delivery. Beautiful, flawless, but Adrian's instinct screamed. Alone, he dug into the soil, finding a tiny listening device glinting under the light. His stomach sank. This wasn't just about her body. They wanted her secrets. He entered Victoria's office, dropped the device into her palm. They're listening, he said. They're already inside. Her face drained of color. For the first time, her composure cracked. She slid a notepad across the desk. They could be listening now. Adrian wrote in steady script, We need a sweep. Someone I trust. That night, after the tower quieted, a young man rolled in a case of equipment. To most, he looked like any consultant. Badge on his jacket, hair dyed jet black. But appearances could deceive. But Adrian knew the truth. Milestone wasn't just any consultant. Once a restless teen with a gift for hacking, he had become one of the city's most respected counter-surveillance experts. Years earlier, Adrian had taught him that raw talent meant little without discipline. That discipline had turned brilliance into purpose. And when Adrian called, Miles didn't hesitate. "It's been a while, Sensei," Miles said softly as Adrian ushered him into Victoria's office. "Too long," Adrian replied, his eyes already sweeping the space. "I only wish it were under better circumstances." Miles worked in silence. His instruments hummed, scanners glowing with spikes of hidden frequencies. He glided through the room with ghost-like focus, checking lamps, frames, baseboards. It didn't take long before the truth surfaced. "One here," he murmured, peeling back velvet from a desk lamp to reveal a device no larger than a fingernail, bagged and sealed. Another was taped behind a massive painting, its antenna disguised against the canvas. A third, embedded in the baseboard beneath a window. Victoria's hand gripped her chair. 3 devices, all in the very room where she made her most guarded decisions. Whoever had planted them hadn't been amateurs. Miles studied one closely, frowning. Military grade. Not something you can buy online. Look at this power source, custom micro battery. Only a handful of manufacturers make these, and none sell to civilians. Adrian's eyes narrowed. "So who buys them?" "Private contractors," Miles replied, sealing the evidence. "The kind with deep pockets and darker connections. Give me a few hours, and I'll trace the batch." Victoria leaned forward, urgent. "Do it, whatever it takes." By 3 a.m., Miles had his answer. A thin dossier landed on Victoria's desk, the city lights glowing beyond the glass. Adrian opened it, scanning quickly. 6 months earlier, a bulk order of micro-batteries had been purchased by Sentinel Corps, a private security firm. And Sentinel Corps was no lone outfit. It belonged to a holding company controlled by Edward Blackwell. Victoria's expression hardened, the name like venom. Blackwell, her rival on the board, the man who had fought her appointment, who smiled in meetings while undermining her every move. Now his mask had slipped. Adrian closed the folder slowly, meeting her gaze. "This wasn't random," he said evenly. "The man sitting beside you at the table is the one trying to pull you off it." The room grew still. The hum of machines, the faint city noise beyond the glass, everything else faded. A chilling truth had settled between them. The enemy wasn't outside. He was already inside. But suspicion alone wasn't enough. Men like Blackwell thrived on layers of deniability. To bring him down, they needed him to expose himself. So they began to weave a trap. Days later, Hale Tower buzzed with rumors carefully planted. Victoria, radiant with confidence, announced to the board that Hale Industries was preparing to acquire Cascade Robotics, a Seattle powerhouse in automation. A deal bold enough to secure her reign. But it was all bait. Adrian played his role with quiet precision. In the security hub, he staged arguments with Mason, loud enough for listening ears. Complaints about weak points in her Seattle itinerary. Grumbling about thin hotel security. Weaknesses that sounded too tempting to ignore. Miles prepared the stage on the outskirts of Portland, a foreclosed warehouse perfect for the performance. By night, he rigged it with cameras, motion sensors, and floodlights, all linked to a disguised command van outside, every angle ready to capture proof. Then came the final piece, the decoy. A woman with blonde hair, trained to mimic Victoria's posture, her voice, even her controlled tension, dressed in the same suit, the same heels. From a distance, in chaos, no one would tell the difference. On the night of the supposed Seattle trip, the performance began. A black SUV identical to Victoria's rolled from Hale Tower, tinted windows hiding the double, flanked by minimal security. Predictable, just as Blackwell's spies would want. In the command van, Adrian and Victoria sat side by side, faces lit by screens. On one, the SUV crossed a bridge. On another, a black sedan tailed behind, the same tied to Sentinel Corps. Adrian's jaw tightened. "They'll strike on the access road," he murmured. "No witnesses. Exactly where I'd hit." Victoria's voice was steady. "Then let them come." The trap sprung. 2 black vans boxed in the SUV, armed men pouring out, dragging the decoy into their van. Tires screeched as the convoy vanished into the night, bound for the warehouse. In the van, Adrian watched calmly. Victoria studied his face, finding no doubt, only the quiet resolve of a hunter. The mercenaries delivered their prize into the warehouse. Hood ripped away. Their CEO stared back with defiance. Confusion rippled. Something felt wrong. Floodlights roared to life, blinding white drowning the darkness. The men staggered, only to see Adrian Park step forward, calm and unshaken, flanked by his hand-picked team. "You were expecting someone else." His voice cut across the chaos. "It's a trap. Take them," the scarred leader shouted. Weapons raised, only for flashbangs to explode overhead. Deafening blasts. Blinding bursts. Then blackness. Shots cracked blindly in the dark. But Adrian's team, armed with night vision, owned the shadows. One by one, mercenaries were neutralized, restrained, weapons stripped away. The predators had become prey. At the center, Adrian closed on the scarred leader. The man lunged with a knife. Adrian's body moved with ruthless rhythm, redirecting the blade, twisting his arm, driving him to the ground. A swift lock, a scream of pain. The fight ended as quickly as it began. When the lights blazed again, the truth was exposed. 10 men from Sentinel Corps restrained, groaning, the decoy unharmed, and every second recorded. But Adrian knew who would come next. The true mastermind. An engine roared outside. A black Mercedes rolled in, headlights slicing the scene. Edward Blackwell stepped out, immaculate suit, smug smile, until he saw the wreckage. His mercenaries broken. Adrian standing tall among them. "What is this?" he barked, his voice cracking. From behind the command van, Victoria emerged, unharmed, unafraid. Her heels struck the floor like a gavel. "Surprised to see me, Edward?" He tried to recover, words slick. "I got a call about a breach. I came to help." But panic flickered in his eyes. Adrian shoved the scarred leader forward. Defeated, the man spoke clearly. "He hired us. Blackwell paid us to take her, to bug her office. The plan was to make her disappear." Blackwell snapped. "He's lying. This is a setup." Victoria silenced him, nodding toward a camera blinking red. "Actually, Edward, say hello to the board." A massive screen flickered to life. The entire board watched, stunned, as the confession replayed. Every word, every detail, undeniable. Victoria's voice rang out. "Members of the board, you've seen it yourselves. Edward Blackwell conspired to abduct me, to infiltrate our company, and to seize power. This is not ambition. This is treason." Blackwell's face drained. He tried to retreat, but Adrian's men blocked the way. Sirens wailed closer. "As of this moment," Victoria declared, her tone sharp as steel, "Edward Blackwell is removed from the board of Hale Industries for conspiracy and betrayal." Police stormed in, lights flashing, cuffs snapping around Blackwell's wrists. His empire crumbled in a single night. In the aftermath, Victoria and Adrian exchanged a glance heavy with meaning. She had trusted him with her life, and he had delivered her enemies into the light. Weeks passed. Hale Tower transformed. Adrian rebuilt security with discipline and clarity. Guards who once mocked him now stood straighter. Mason Burke was replaced by those who had earned respect. Miles officially joined. His restless genius turned toward building a fortress of vigilance. Where once whispers thrived, now there was silence. For Adrian, this was more than security. It was reclaiming safety. Not just for Victoria, but for Lena. And slowly, something shifted. Meetings turned into late-night conversations about grief, childhood, and loneliness. Walls lowered. The distance between CEO and janitor blurred. Lena sensed it first. She ran into Victoria's arms as easily as her father's. Her drawing showed 3 figures, herself between Adrian and Victoria, stick hands linked beneath a giant sun. When Victoria saw those drawings taped to the fridge, her eyes softened in a way Adrian had never witnessed. One evening, at Mrs. Gable's kitchen table, the 3 of them shared cookies and stories. Simple, ordinary, but for Adrian, it was everything. He realized he wasn't a ghost anymore. He wasn't only a fighter. He was part of something he thought he had lost forever. A home. Victoria's walls fell in quiet moments. Adrian found joy again, and Lena's laughter bound them all together. What formed wasn't a contract, not a strategy, but a family. Courage, trust, and love had drawn them into a light that finally felt safe.